How's it going? It's another photo talk episode with PM Designs
GJP Photos.
and I haven't put out anything recently. There'll be a link to his channel. He's put out some videos recently talking about the new Sony A6000, and I've been seeing a lot of photographers, professionals, and some kind of aspiring professional photographers have put out videos recently talking about that they're divorcing Canon or they're divorcing Nikon. More people divorcing Canon. I'm sorry, Nikon. One in particular, Jason Lanier, which I've been looking at his stuff, and I'm impressed by his work. If you haven't checked him out, I highly recommend going check out his channel. But to start off, which this is, we've both picked up new cameras. I picked up recently the Sony A7, which, if you're not familiar with it, full frame mirrorless camera. I'm blown away by it. And my buddy over there, he recently picked up something as well, which
I picked up the A6000, which I like it. It's a big improvement over my T3i, but I'm not nearly as blown away by it as my friend here and his A7.
yeah. One thing I will say though is that for the price point, though, the A6K, which is what I've been calling it, the A6K, A6000. So if I switch up and I use A6K, and if you hear noises in the background, it's my dogs trying to dig a hole to China in their doghouse. So that's what that noise is. But if you actually look at the price point though, how much did you invest into yours?
I think with taxes, it was in the upper 800s.
Right, and that gave you what, a 16 to 50?
It gave me a camera body, a memory card, camera bag. I think it's 50 to 210, and the 16 to I think it's 55.
Okay. Whereas on mine, I paid, it was on sale because they have the new A7 Mark II that just came out. And I picked up mine pretty much the week that the A7 Mark II was announced. So mine, I was able to get it. I think it was like a $400 price break on it, but I was still, after taxes and everything, spent $1,800 for the camera body, a memory card, no camera bag, and the 24 or 28 to 70 variable aperture lens. And then I additionally picked up the 70 to 200 f4 G lens, which my biggest complaint, I guess, right off the bat with this camera system. If you can't tell, the dog's a noise. I'm really sorry. They'll either go to sleep soon or they'll keep doing it, and I'm sorry. But my biggest complaint is, and it's something that I picked up reading on the forums, is that Sony hasn't dedicated to a certain mount. So they had, I think it was the alpha mount on the NEX cameras, and then they went to the E mount and the FE mount for their new alpha line. I don't know if you're looking that up on your phone or not. If you would put your phone on silent, please. Not that it will make a difference with the puppies. But, I'm sorry, y'all. But that was kind of the biggest thing, and the reason why, because Sigma has, I believe they've actually announced that, look, we're not going to touch it because they're not sticking to a camera until they'll stick to a mount. Then we'll start making stuff, and I understand that. Kind of like why, if you have like an iPhone, you can go to OtterBox and get an OtterBox case. But if you have an Android phone, unless I think they may be doing stuff with the Samsung stuff, and that's really the only one that OtterBox is producing cases for. I was getting off topic a little bit, but it's if the company that you're producing lenses for is going to switch to a different mount within 1 or 2 years, why put all that engineering into lenses that 1 or 2 years of sales is all you're going to get? We're not talking about phone cases. We're talking about $1,000 lenses here. But getting back on to talking about the cameras, I know on my A7, one of my biggest complaints is that when it's charging, and it doesn't come with an actual wall charger for the battery, but when it's charging, you can't use the camera. So if you're trying to do some kind of studio work and you have it plugged in through USB to kind of charge it while you're using it, the camera basically wants to say, "Oh nope, I can't do anything. I'm charging." Did you find anything?
Yeah, I was just gonna touch on the whole changing mounts deal, and I agree that is why some of the third party brands are hesitant, because you have Nikon, who has been using the F mount since 1959, and Canon, while not as long, they've had their EF line since 1987. So, I mean, we're going on decades of having these consistent, not having to change your mount up every few years, where the E mount is relatively new. Whenever the first NEX cameras came out is when it started.
Well, actually, I think on the NEX cameras they were using an A mount, if I'm not mistaken.
They very well might have.
And then I think somewhere towards the end, I think some of them started switching to E mount, or maybe they switched to E mount when they came with the Alpha line, which is like the A7, A6000, A5100, A5000.
Regardless, I mean, they're still changing. Even the A mount has only been around since 2006.
Right.
Now, it's identical to the old Minolta A mount, so you can use old Minolta lenses on an A mount camera. But prior to that, I believe Sony had a different.
Which I think is actually, it's kind of a good thing that you can use some of this older vintage glass. That way, you can go to thrift stores, camera shops, eBay, different places, and buy some of these older lenses and have kind of a retro feel where you have full manual control on your lens, and it works fine with the camera.
But if you're Sigma Tamron, you look at it as, okay, every 5 years they're changing their mount, so
Right.
we're not going to waste money on R&D on a product that is no longer going to be sold 5 years from now.
Right, exactly. I mean, if I was in their shoes, I'd feel the same way.
Whereas if they make an EF mount, okay, they know Canon's not abandoning the EF mount anytime soon. So,
Right. I mean, the only thing I could see, and we had kind of, we had joked about this actually earlier. We went and messed around with our cameras, because I've been having my camera about a month now, and I've really only just been taking pictures inside the house with it and just kind of trying to get a feel for the controls on it, because I've been using Canon for 4 or 5 years now. I've been shooting with only Canon cameras. I was using XTI and then my T3. I mean, I have my Pentax little camera. I mean, and I've also got my
you have quite a few cameras.
my SX500. And then back in the day, I had my Canon PowerShot, and I used that thing till I wore out the freaking buttons on it. But I will definitely say that in shooting with the Sony cameras, at first, and this is also be on mirrorless in general, is at first I was thinking, mirrorless isn't going to be the thing of the future, but
in fact, don't mean to interrupt you, but I believe maybe our first photo talk that we did, we kind of touched on the DSLR versus mirrorless, and if I remember correctly, we were profoundly against mirrorless not that long ago.
Yeah, I mean, but it's one of those things where really, they basically say, and this is said in so many different aspects, don't knock it till you try it. I mean, seriously, if they've got companies out there that you can rent a camera and some lenses through, I highly recommend. I mean, it may cost you a little bit, but I really recommend, if you're interested, or you just completely think, I don't even think that I'm not even gonna like mirrorless. Go rent one, go give it a try. And I'm not being paid by anybody to say go give them a try. I just genuinely feel if you try it, there will probably be stuff in there that you'll like. My thing with shooting with DSLRs, and I noticed that this today, is when you're shooting with the DSLR, you're looking through the lens, and when you go to take that picture, you have to kind of have an understanding of, okay, what is my depth of field going to give me with this certain aperture? Okay, you're relying on your light meter to say this is correctly exposed, this is incorrectly exposed. You're relying on that, and you're just, a lot of times, if you're until you've really, maybe not if you're trying to do, specific things, but when you're trying to do something that's a little tricky and a little creative, you have to have that ability to envision what you're doing and see the image before it's going to take it. Whereas with mirrorless, you're looking through the viewfinder, you're looking through the rear, the LCD display on the back of the camera. You see what you're going to capture. I mean, it may capture it within a little bit of that image, a little lighter, a little darker, depending on the camera and how the processing works in it. But, I mean, you can see where you're going to get, blown out highlights. You can see what's in focus. You can see your depth of field. And today, we had started taking photos, and when I saw you flip up your LCD display and get just squat down on the ground. I'm like, what is he doing? And then I'm seeing him. I'm looking at the back of his screen, and he's taking this picture of this bottle, and I'm like, wow, the depth of field was just perfect. It was this beautiful image, and I'm like, I ought to do that. So, and it was late in the evening. The sun was about to go down. I mean, it was horrible conditions for photos. But as soon as we both kind of changed our perspective and started shooting these items that were just on the ground, empty bottles. We found an old metal Pepsi bottle cap, and I mean, the images that we were capturing were stunning, really. And I'm sure we'll both edit these, and probably we'll throw a link to our Flickr pages to the galleries of these images into the description, so you can look at these. It may not be when the video first goes up, so you may need to come back and just look in there, because I'll probably end up having this up before we get a chance to have our photos and all edited. But the links will be down there, so come back and check that out.
To backtrack a little bit, you were mentioning renting a mirrorless setup to just give it a try. You can, on borrowlenses.com, rent the A7 body, and depending on which lens you go with, I know if you get the Zeiss 24-70, you can rent it for about $150 for 7 days.
I mean, that's really not bad.
No, it's really not.
I mean, and I'm sure you could rent the A6000 if you were interested in that, or
I didn't see it on there, but
oh no,
it may be if you dig a little deeper.
Yeah, but I mean, in reality, you can see what. I mean, what were we talking about? You can see what you're gonna get. It's obviously a lot smaller. And then I noticed if you're used to using a DSLR and used to using your flip out LCD screen to help you frame your shot, there's a lot of the mirror having to flip up, flip down, flip the so before it actually takes the images, there's a lot of mirror movement. Whereas this, you get your focus, you take the picture, done.
Yeah, I want to touch on something. It holds true for yours, but for mine, you see what you're going to get to an extent. I know some video reviews out there have said otherwise, but I am extremely not impressed with the LCD screen and the optical viewfinder on the A6000. I find the resolution is just not there, because I've noticed I've taken pictures and I'll look at them in the camera and be like, it's okay. But then, I throw them on a computer and it's like, whoa, I mean, crystal clear. So you see what you're going to get to an extent.
Right.
And I mean, that's also the same with a DSLR. I mean, if it's got a crappy LCD screen, I mean, it's, your preview image when you're done is not going to look great, but you can get a better idea of your focus through the viewfinder with a DSLR than I think you do with the A6000. But
well, and I also want to say in that regard too, yes, I think it also comes down to the type of display that you're viewing these photos on with respect to your computer. If you're using a lower end monitor, like I remember when you first got your computer and you purchased the first monitor for it, it wasn't that good. And then you went back and bought a better quality monitor that had better picture. So, but like you're saying, what you're capturing looks better on your display of your computer, which I understand that, because you're dealing with a device that's portable, battery powered.
yeah. But even compared to my T3i, the screen just doesn't compare.
Right. And that is one thing I have read, which, to be honest with you, I mean, we probably didn't shoot, I think, maybe 40 or 50 shots today.
Oh, I don't even know if I took 10.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Well,
maybe 15.
I know I was kind of, I was taking a lot more of, maybe not shots that I would actually do anything with, but more just, trying to get a feel for the controls and, just mastering the camera a little more. I mean, ultimately, I probably have maybe, 5 to 10 that I'd probably say are, you know, that I would actually do something with. But, that's the whole thing, is just getting out there and practicing. But I will say this, and I know a lot of times they say, gear doesn't make a better photographer. But in a way, with these cameras, I almost will say that because you can see what you're getting, you kind of know, and you feel more comfortable going into manual, because it's not like, all right, I'm gonna take this photo and I'm gonna see what I'm gonna get after I take it, and after I'm sitting there looking at my screen on the back of the camera on my DSLR. You see what it is, so okay, well, I want a shallower depth of field, or I want more depth of field, or I want, or if you have the little zebra stripes on there, so you can, which, I'm sure not all mirrorless cameras have it. Some probably do, some don't. It's one of those features that, but with having that, I can see what areas are overexposed, so I can turn my shutter speed down. I can turn my ISO down, or I'm a little bit too dark. All right, well, I'm getting a little too low on my ISO to be hand-holding. I mean, on my shutter speed to hand-hold. Let me bump up my ISO some. And you can see that real time. And that's something that you just can't do on a DSLR until after you take that picture. So I think it'll get more beginners getting out of auto, getting into the more creative modes.
You're less likely to miss a shot.
Right. Especially because, you won't end up with a photo that's like, okay, this is way blown out, because it's easier to bring a underexposed back. Once it's blown out, it's gone, you know. And
that's what I always, not always, but a lot more often than not, I'll underexpose a photo.
And earlier, that's pretty much what I was doing too. I may not have been underexposing, but I was just making sure I didn't have. I mean, I may have had like a speck of a blown out highlight, like way off in the sky or something, or in some area of the photo that I may crop out. But I mean, ultimately, it really, I'm almost tempted to be like, you know what? I mean, yeah, I've got some my Canon stuff, but I'm almost thinking, why am I holding on to this Canon stuff? Maybe, if someone wants to come with me, taking pictures, of just being able to have a system that I can say, here, we're going to take some photos. It's a system I know I'm competent with, so I feel confident and comfortable teaching somebody. But it's almost like, would I almost just feel like selling it off and go and get, an A6000 with the money from the Canon gear, and, having something that's really beginner friendly, which I ultimately feel like mirrorless is beginner friendly. And if you look at these professionals out there that are saying, I've sold my Nikon stuff, I've sold my Canon stuff, I bought into this system. Sure, when I show up to a wedding, I think, this is kind of quoting from some of the stuff that they've said, like, maybe when I show up to a wedding, people are probably going to look at me like I'm funny, like, why do you're a professional, why don't you have this huge camera? Why don't you have this huge lens? You're going to shoot my wedding with that? But like they say, it's not the gear that you're shooting with. It's, the photographer and their skill and their ability to see and capture the moment.
Yeah. I've seen people take phenomenal pictures with an iPhone. I mean,
exactly.
A buddy of mine posted a picture he took in New York today. And when I first glanced at it, I was like, man, that's a really cool picture. And then I quickly realized that it was taken with an iPhone.
Yeah, I mean, and nowadays, with regard to cameras and phone cameras and just everything, technology is advancing. Like, one of the channels I'm subscribed to on YouTube, which is a lot. I wanna say it was I think it was Eric Rossi had said this. Is that in his opinion he feels like 2015, like 2014, we were seeing a lot of 20 something megapixel cameras out there. His opinion and what he was saying is that he thinks that and some of this is based on proposed plans and rumored and leaked plans by some of these camera manufacturers, is that 50 megapixel cameras are gonna be coming out. This is, I think, and I'm strongly agreeing with him that 50 megapixel is gonna be out there by the end of the year at least.
Canon supposedly has something in the works, 50 megapixel range. I think Sony does too.
Yeah, and I think I would almost say too, you may not find 50 megapixel in, say, your aps-c size sensors, but I think more in your full frame cameras, and then I'm sure in some of your like medium formats. I think you're gonna start seeing a few more companies coming out with, maybe skipping putting out a full frame and maybe trying to say, let's go for the medium format range.
Yeah, who knows?
I mean, I think this is going to be a year that there's going to be a lot of interesting things coming out. I almost want to say that I think Sony is really putting a lot of these big camera brands back onto the drawing board to say, look, we're cramming a full frame sensor in a small mirrorless camera, and we're making it affordable, and we're making this thing put out beautiful images.
If Sony could find a way to make their cameras to where their battery life lasted longer, what are some other things that I thought of?
Well, the thing is, I think with battery life, is they're really going to have to say, look, we're going to have to make a larger camera, maybe almost DSLR size, maybe not quite, but or sell, because you can do a battery grip with I'm having issues with my levels on this mic. Doing something, they have battery grips, so you can have 2 batteries on the camera. That's going to increase your battery life, just given. But I think what they're trying to do is stick with a battery design, because if I'm not mistaken, the batteries that our cameras use is a very long used battery for the Sonys. So I think maybe they may need to redesign their battery and go to a new style. But the good thing is like your camera and my camera, and I want to say the NEXs too, all use the same battery. So if you're coming from an NEX system and you already have your batteries, your chargers, you don't have to get new ones. If you have a A7 and you have an A6000, like I've seen a lot of people doing, you don't have to carry around batteries for each. You carry around, you have a few batteries charged up, you can use them in both. In my opinion, I think that's a good design thing. Battery life, I mean, you're trying to push, your camera can shoot, 11 frames a second. That's amazing to me, I mean, mine, I think is what, five, I think on the high on speed priority, which I have noticed, which I dislike. And this is my biggest thing about that is like, sometimes I would want that burst. And I believe yours does it too. When you go into speed priority, it likes to take photos in burst mode versus being able to allow you to take 11 shots if you want to take 11, or just take one snapshot if that's what you want to take. Now, they may fix that in the firmware revision, or that could just be something that, it is what it is kind of thing. But
the point I was trying to make was that if Sony can find a way to improve battery life, maybe fine-tune the viewfinder system and rear LCD system, and then maybe get a couple more lenses, maybe a few faster lenses. I think the traditional not Canon, Nikon, DSLR companies they'll be in a tight spot. They're going to be which could be good for people who shoot Canon, Nikon. I think they're really going to force Canon and Nikon to really come up with something, or at least attempt to come up with something groundbreaking. Because I mean, these mirrorless cameras that Sony's putting out are pretty damn impressive.
I definitely agree. I mean, just look at us. I mean, you bought yours and you're like, dude, I'm selling off my T3i. I mean,
Yeah, I still have it, but I'm not attached to it. I mean, the A6000 does everything that my Canon does. I mean, granted, it's an entry level T3i, and all I have is 2 kit lenses for it. But
but I mean, the thing of it is that
the Canon package compared to the Sony package I have, I mean, I'm not missing out on anything if I were to sell the Canon.
exactly, and I mean, to me,
And the Sony does so much more than the Canon does. So,
and to me, to kind of talk on that point too, if I was to recommend, if someone walked up to me right now and said, I want to get a good camera, I want something that I can take photos of the kids, I can use for, the kids' football game, and they were like, I want to go buy a DSLR, I couldn't recommend it. I would honestly, I would say, look into this mirrorless stuff. Go look at it. Go, what's your budget? You know what? Do you want a viewfinder? Do you want a viewfinder that you can put your eye up to? Or are you okay to, to be kind of like your iPhone and just look at a screen on the back? And maybe, pretty much say, go look at the A6000. Oh, you want to spend a little bit less? You don't really need the viewfinder? Go look at the 5100. I would more tell them to look into that route.
I thought it was the A5000.
It might be. I think it's either the A5000 or the 5100.
That was the A5000 was the one I was originally looking at before I even looked at the A6000. That was the one that had me intrigued because of the aps-c size sensor.
That's true. For some reason, I thought it was the A5100.
It might be. I don't know. We both might be full of crap.
Oh, because if I'm not mistaken, I want to say it was the. He's gonna look it up on the.
Oh, I know what it was. I was looking at the A5000, but the A5100 is the recent. I think it's recent refresh to the A5000.
Okay. But, and then I think they're also coming out with what, the A7000 rumored.
As I say, it is rumored. Nothing has been confirmed yet.
Right.
Yeah, the A5100 has been out since August. I want to say the A5000 was like back when the A6000 came out.
But I will getting back to the lens stuff that we touched on a little bit earlier, or maybe a good bit earlier. If you're looking at buying these cameras, you can get adapters to use other glass, and I know we did talk about that too, talking about how you can use Minolta glass on the cameras, as well as you can get adapters that
you need let me specify. You need an adapter. You can use Minolta lenses, I believe, on the Sony Alpha DSLRs.
Okay. But they make different adapters, and some of these adapters are like $10, depending on what you're looking to use, and then depending, obviously, if the adapters are going to pass through electronic communication to control aperture on your newer lenses, or if you use an older glass that doesn't need any kind of electrical communication to it. It's all just manual focus, manual zoom, manual aperture. If you're using that kind of glass, then the adapter's gonna be dirt cheap. And one thing that you can look into doing, and I looked at this route because you can go buy, and I want to say the adapter's around $400, and I think they may have come up with a newer version that's a little bit more expensive. But I think it's made by a company, Metabones. But then I think Photodiox, which is, I want to say they're out of China somewhere. So you can find them on Amazon. There's a couple other companies that are making adapters like this, but you can basically use your Nikon glass on the Sony bodies. You can use your Canon glass on the Sonys. I had looked into that route originally before I went and spent the $1,500 on my 70-200, because while a 28 to 70 on an aps-c sensor, I think would be okay. I think it would give you an okay range to be able, for more than just, up close work. How I photograph, the type of stuff I like to do. And a lot of the places we go to, I can't frame the shot that I want with that focal length. If you're doing more street photography work or maybe some portrait work, you could probably get by with the 28 to 70 or if you're able to get closer into that subject, you can use the 28-70. But a lot of places we go to, you just can't. So I wanted that longer focal length, and I was gonna get an adapter, but everywhere I read, it was just, they're slow, they don't focus right, and sometimes you're trying to capture an image, and you're trying to capture it then. And it was one of those things. I just I didn't think I would get the image that I wanted buying an adapter to use my Canon glass on the Sony.
That, and I mean, aside from your 85, I think you would have been doing a disservice to your camera, to, like, not trying to knock your, what is it, 75 to 300?
It's whatever the non-image stabilized kit.
Yeah,
EF,
I mean, that's you'd be putting a kit lens on a top end body.
Right. And that was a lot of why I just said, you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead and bite the bullet. And to be honest with you, after today, with the images that, I mean, when our friend was over here earlier and we were just standing in the kitchen, I was like, hey, hold on a second, snap. And I just took a quick little headshot of a friend of ours that was over here. It was just, the detail. And then you went and grabbed your T3i and went and took a picture. And I mean, we could count how many mustache hairs are on his face. And then on the T3i, it was just,
all blended together.
We could tell that there was some stubble there, or there's like, it just.
I also had to shoot at a higher ISO, so there was more noise. I mean, they don't compare.
Exactly. And I mean, in a lot of that, we're not saying the T3i is a bad camera.
No,
I mean,
it's a phenomenal camera.
I mean, if that's
for what it is.
And to be honest with you, for like you said, for what you're getting, the camera is a very, very capable camera. But it's dated, and it's obvious. I mean, Canon's on what, the T3Is? I think they may even have T6s and T6Is out now.
They just put the T5Is on sale, so they're probably getting ready for a T6i.
And I mean, I think
and they've already had the T4i that hasn't been made for over a year.
Right. So I mean, I think that we'll definitely be seeing, Canon coming out with some stuff, in the future. But, I just, like I said earlier, I feel like I can't really recommend, a DSLR after going to mirrorless. What about you?
I kind of feel the same way. We were just talking about the T3i. It is it was released in about almost 4 years ago. So yeah, I mean that's dated technology in today's terms.
Definitely. No, I know in like your pro end cameras, 4 years is really about when they'll kind of put out a new one. But another thing which will kind of, this is, I guess, how we'll close this photo talk. I mean, because I'm sure you're about ready to, kind of go ahead and call it an episode. I kind of just lost my train of thought. Wow. I had something that was really, really good I was about to say. Crud.
Oh well.
Oh well. It's gonna come back to me as soon as I turn this microphone off. But like I said, like we said earlier, if you have a mirrorless that you can borrow from somebody, I highly recommend trying one out. Rent one if you want to. Go to a store, pick one up, and play around with it for a few minutes in the store. But all in all, just I highly recommend a mirrorless. Oh, I know what I want. I know what it was. In seeing recently, we had kind of touched on this earlier. I know, not quite this part of the topic, but I know Sony produces sensors for Nikon. Or that's the internet rumor. I don't know if it's ever been like confirmed or someone has solid proof, but I know that's been one of the things that goes around the internet. And basing off of if that is true, is being that there's been so many people recently, and after today, I mean, I may agree with, that these may be really just genuine, just these are Nikon shooters leaving Nikon going to Sony. But is Sony paying people out there to take a stab at Nikon because Nikon's going to stop using their sensors or something?
I don't know. I did hear a rumor that at some point in the not too distant future that Nikon would be developing its own sensor. So maybe there's some kind of riff in there. I don't know.
I mean, it may just like you said, it may be something that Sony's either not happy with it or Sony's trying to say, you know what. But I'm glad that Sony's definitely putting out some. They're throwing stones and making that water ripple, and really trying to say, look, guys, we're a serious contender in this market. We're putting out some kick butt product, and y'all better step up your game because we're gonna take market share here, guys. So.
That's also after the camera industry's also been hit pretty hard by the cell phone industry. So
right now everybody,
the market's even smaller.
Yeah, I mean, how many photos do you take on your cell phone versus how many do you bring your camera to take a photo of? You always have your cell phone. You don't always have your DSLR or your mirrorless with you. So
yeah.
Any questions, comments, and stuff, and keep it friendly, keep it ethical, I guess. Whatever. Have a discussion on what we talked about. The photos and stuff, we will put some links to the photos that were from today's little shoot, so you can check those out. It may not be up when this episode's put up. It all depends on when everything is, whenever I get all my stuff edited, when he gets his stuff edited. Yes, if you tap on the stand that your mic is on, it does not get absorbed by the shock mount for the mic. So, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed it.
See you next time.
And have a good one.